Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, when the Oscars happened, John Cena came out nude. And this is another example of the hedonism that plagues America due to the liberals. Now, classically, the Oscars were some grand, stuck-up, snobby affair. And for them now to resort to nudity in order to get attention shows you that they are desperately trying to get their viewership back again. And John Cena was really popular with young men because of his wrestling stuff and things like that. And for him to come out fully nude to a bunch of people, it's a very sexual act. It's eroticism in the most strange way, and it's also forced nudity upon people who didn't really consent to it or want it, even though the audience there is most likely a bunch of perverts. It's still grotesque that the viewer, both through the medium, as in your cell phone, TV, your laptop, wherever you're watching it through, and those actually in the physical audience, they're forced to look at someone who's barely covering their genitals. And it also shows you how it's also humiliating in a way. Now, John Cena isn't a fat pig, so maybe he's boastful and arrogant over his physique, but it's also humiliating to require someone to dress down and go on stage and expose themselves to everyone, right? Now, some would argue, especially liberals, oh, well, men go to the beach in Speedos. What's the difference? Now, I don't think men should be allowed to wear Speedos on beaches, and I find it quite disgusting, but it is different when you go to the beach because you are sort of expecting some type of disgustingness from men and women, I'd argue, sadly, but it's quite different when you watch the Oscars. And I want you to think about how some people watch the Oscars, unfortunately, with their young family members. And John Cena coming out basically nude is a form of a male exposing himself to your children. And it just goes to prove my point further how liberals make society more disgustingly degenerate and decadent, and that they really do pride themselves on not being modest. It's like they have a strict opposition to classy modesty and gentlemanly behavior and conservatism in general. Okay? You constantly see men in dresses, with makeup, doing drag, and now you're seeing men just walking on stage nude. And that is a Western value. Nudity is a Western value. Exposing the nudity to people is Western value. You'll see tons of Greek god statues all around, and they pride themselves in fetishizing and glamorizing the human form. And now you have people even making fat statues, right? They just like being naked. It's really difficult to wrestle a liberal and make them put on loose clothing. They just have this desire to constantly force their body onto others, and to exist in a lust cycle where there's so much sexual stimulation that their brains are controlled like a chihuahua humping a pillow, where they can't stop just being grotesquely horny, and they always have to force it in other people's faces. And it's like a saturated way of living, where they have to constantly saturate people with nudity, which breaks down the family, because it breeds eroticism, and eroticism, when unchecked and unregulated, fuels adultery, which breaks apart families, leads to divorce, leads to single-parent homes, spreads STDs, and fosters abortion. It's a connected web. And so when you see John Cena stooping this low to behavior in order to get back in the spotlight, get his name on the news, and to get more gigs, right? You begin to see, like, is power in that arena worth it? Is it worth it for you to just expose yourself? Now, if you look at Mr. Olympia, those guys are doing their show and they're exposing themselves, and one could argue, what's the difference? I agree that both of those things are strange and bizarre, and that we shouldn't have stuff like that. Now, the Greeks said in the past, if you look at their writings, that they used to do the Olympics fully nude and rub themselves down with olive oil, and it's quite strange to think about humans just really not liking to cover up. And I really respect how Islam has the sense of awrah for men, and how it calls people to be better. It calls people to be more classy, more modest, and less decadent, less hedonistic, and less voyeuristic. And I really value that about Islam. And hopefully, John Cena coming out nude makes less and less people care about the Oscars, and just shows you how Hollywood is Holly weird. And we shouldn't be watching those shows with our children, and we shouldn't respect those actors, and the common folk should turn away from the bizarreness of the wealthy elite and their strange tendency to constantly want to get nude and to show people their nakedness instead of covering up. Alhamdulillah for Islam. Let me know what you think. It is gross, and I really hope we can start changing that culture, right? It's a husband and a wife watching that, and then the husband comes out. It's very awkward. It's very intrusive, like trying to breed jealousy within the relationship. Women get jealous when a bimbo comes out with her twins hanging out. It's very uncomfortable. And then you have the male being exposed. It's just weird. That's why you have so many open relationships now, because liberals don't value loyalty in that sense and exclusivity. They are really into sexual deviance, and so they are obviously, due to their atheistic values, don't have the same moral standards of modesty, virtue, and loyalty, and whatnot. So for them, John Cena coming out nude and exposing himself to the world against their consent and knowledge, it's par for the course for their morality. They're quite depraved individuals, and they'll just get very upset at a Muslim woman such as myself wanting the man to cover up, and why can't he just wear a nice suit? But alas, trying to get a liberal to be modest is quite difficult. They are like that dog that constantly is humping the foot of someone. You hit them and they just keep humping air. That's pretty much the liberal brain, if you ask me. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilhanArchive. Hope to see you there.